Hi, and thanks for watching. In this video, I wanted to talk a little bit about the progression in our Qigong practice when we get beyond the beginner stage. But before we talk about some of that Qigong theory, let's do a Qigong practice. We'll do a single posture called the four-direction posture. So for this Qigong, we have our feet about shoulder width apart. We set our weight over our heels, we relax our low back, lifting the spine up, setting the shoulders down. Our hands, which are at our sides, come to the small of the back, so we bring one hand over the other, palms facing up. The hands then come around the waist, one. We bring the hands up about chest height, two. We then point our fingertips forward and extend our hands forward, three. We then bring our arms out to the sides, four. We then turn our palms to face front, and then we bring our hands in front of us, fingertips pointing towards each other. Five. Bending the elbows, we bring our hands in towards our chest. Six. Palms facing down. The hands come down level with the lower abdomen. Seven. And then we bring our hands to our sides, palms still facing downwards. And eight. Doing that same motion again, we gather our hands to the small of the back, bringing our hands around the waist, one. To keep the shoulders relaxed, we bring the elbows out to the sides, two. Dropping the elbows, pointing the fingertips forward, the hands go forward at shoulder height, three. We then bring our shoulder blades towards each other, arms coming out to the sides at shoulder height, four. We then turn our palms to face front and make a nice big circle with our hands in front of us, chest height, five. Bringing the palms in towards the shoulders, six. Turn the palms to face down. Lower the hands level with the lower abdomen, seven. Bringing our arms to the sides, weight over the heels, and eight. Two more times that same motion. So we gather up to the small of the back. We relax the back as the hands come around the waist, one. Bringing the hands up, two. Relax the shoulders, point the fingertips forward, three. Lift the torso up as the hands go forward. And then bring the arms out to the sides, opening across the chest, four. And then we bring our hands, palms facing into a nice big circle in front of us, five. Bending the elbows, the hands come in towards the torso, six. Lowering the hands, palm face down, level with the lower abdomen, seven. Bringing our arms to our sides, eight. One more time. Gathering the hands to the small of the back and around the waist, one. Relaxing the back. As the hands come up, lift the torso, two. As the hands go forward, set the weight back and lengthen the spine, three. Opening out to the sides, and four. We then bring our hands, palms face in front of us, five. Bringing the hands in towards the torso, six. Gradually lowering the hands level with the lower abdomen, seven. Arms coming to our sides, palms facing down. And eight, and close. Very good. I wanted to talk about an experience that's fairly common when it comes to the practice of Qigong. People start to practice Qigong and they find that it's very relaxing, it's very calming. And this experience draws them to the practice, and so they take up a regular Qigong practice. And this ends up taking some of the emotions and reducing them. We get to a point, though, when we realize that what we've mainly accomplished is that the emotions which used to be very strong, it's sort of like if the volume was turned up to 11, too loud, we've been able to turn the volume down. And so now the volume is set at a 1 or a 2. And so it's important to recognize that while this is an important thing to have accomplished, it's only an initial stage. As in, it's important because it gives us this opportunity to make a distinction between ourselves and the emotions that we experience. However, there is a danger that if we just stay at this point, all we've done is simply distanced ourselves from our emotions. The emotions are still there. And then, for example, if we're not in our practice, the emotions can be just as difficult to manage as before. And so there becomes this question of how do we re-engage with the emotions in a way that allows us to have a better relationship to them. It's worth mentioning at this point that there's a distinction to be made between, say, Western psychology and Eastern practices. A lot of Western approaches to the emotions or psychology is to focus on the emotions. What are you feeling? What were you feeling? What happened to make you feel this way? An interesting distinction with Eastern approaches is not to focus on the emotions. There's a concern that in focusing on the emotions, we merely perpetuate that state or amplify that emotion unnecessarily. So what are we to do instead? What we are instead guided to do is to do. In this case, to make it more specific, it's to do the practice, to focus on the practice of Qigong. And there becomes this realization that the Qigong can change our emotional state. And that is the beginning of the next stage, in that we have this understanding in that the regulation of the breath and the regulation of the Qi and the regulation of the channels, this is changing our relationship to our emotions. Eventually, with this practice, then it becomes something where our practice can change our emotions, but it's also establishing a relationship which allows the emotions to change us. But the relationship is one which is a more beneficial type of relationship. And so the outward practice doesn't actually, I think, look any different. It's the difference of this inward intention. And that at this point, because we know that Qigong is translated as Qi exercise or Qi work, and one of the main goals is to cultivate the Qi, to regulate the channels, to enable us to better regulate the flow of Qi in our bodies. Sometimes this is summed up by the ideas of Qi cultivation and also of opening the channels, right? Cleansing the channels. So if we're focusing on these things, why do we have to think and talk about this emotional stuff? And I think the reason for it is because within the perspective of Chinese medicine, our emotions are a reflection or is an experience of the movement of the Qi. In other words, the movement of the Qi, the upward, the downward, the outward, the inward, these four directions is experienced as emotions in our day-to-day lives. And so when the degree to which the Qi moves up just a little bit or moving up, rushing upwards far too much, and then of course complex combinations of emotions. There's this terrible sinking feeling followed by this rising state leading to anxiety. These kinds of complex interactions between the ways that the Qi can move all are experienced as our emotions. Add to this a fifth component, which is our ability to contain the Qi and the ability for our channels to regulate and manage the flow of the qi. And then the 4 directions plus this expansion and this increase in our capability, these 5 relate directly to the 5 primary emotions in Chinese medicine. And of course, as I was mentioning, the variations in terms of how they move, this rate at which they move, and how they combine with each other, that translates into these complex emotional states that we can experience every day. And so the focus or this concern around our emotions and this interest in the practice of Qigong, they are exactly one and the same, especially when we come beyond the beginner stage. Or perhaps a different way of saying this is to say that if we are focused on opening the channels, if we're focused on the cultivation of qi, but we find that our progress is somehow getting blocked, then perhaps part of the way to resolve this and to continue our progression is to take into consideration this additional aspect of how the practice can help us shift and change and regulate our emotional states and responses and bring us into a better dialogue with our emotions. So I hope this information is helpful for you. Keep practicing, keep training, and take care.